Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have another great show for you today. It is Tuesday morning. Thanks for joining us. Lindsey is back, and you were waylaid, I understand, by my least favorite government agency.
Yes,
the
Congress.
TSA.
Oh, well, TSA, I'm not going to blame TSA here. So I think that because Congress can't figure out how to negotiate, TSA is not being paid. And so a lot of people who don't want to work for free, which is totally understandable, didn't show up for
they
work.
Don't want to work for free, to be clear.
Yes, at Hobby Airport. You can look that one up in Texas, in Houston. It was about 3 to 5 hour delays yesterday. So I was part of that drama. But also, I'm not the most inconvenienced. I think the inconvenienced people are the people that still are getting affected by this government shutdown. So please fix it, Congress. I mean, I know you also love Congress.
I would also just abolish the TSA, right? Because it's not.
We should just walk straight through. I told you the sense of security makes me feel protected. I don't care if you think that the actual liquids affect us or not.
Walk straight through on the train, on the bus, on the metro.
Something about being in the sky and having no control over my life. And I know I have no control on the train, but in the air, I want to know that I have been
whatever
searched.
Private security measures the airlines would implement would be just fine. The same as they go for the building we're working out of has some security measures. When you go into a concert, you walk through court. You go to court. You go through a medical detector. Do a little bit. That's fine. We don't have to take off shoes and unpack our luggage and those things. But that's just me.
Coming up on Rising, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham is facing criticism for a couple of comments that he made recently on Fox News Monday night. One of those being that he stands with Israel over, quote, the isolationists.
Plus, the DOJ has charged 2 people in connection with attempted attack outside Gracie Mansion in New York City.
And a former CIA officer is criticizing the agency's investigation into so-called Havannah Syndrome, which is a mystery illness that could be the result of an alleged Russian weapon. But first, Robby, what is on your radar today?
Well, the Democratic Party still has a huge image problem. According to a new poll from NBC News, the party and its most likely 2028 presidential candidates are toxically unpopular with voters. This poll caught my attention and the attention of a lot of people on social media because it suggested that AI is becoming unpopular. This was a simple, straight-up positive and negative reactions to people and to things. And social media noticed that AI was 20 points underwater, making it even less popular than ICE, which was negative 18 on favorability. This was a survey of 1,000 registered voters over the telephone and via text message. It has an error margin of 3 points, so please do take all of this with a grain of salt. Even so, it's striking to me that the Democratic Party as an institution was even more unpopular than ICE and AI. The only thing that polled worse as a concept was the nation of Iran, which we're currently at war with. In a military action situation with, not a war. Don't call it a war, whatever you do. And the likely Dem candidates fared a little better. Kamala Harris is at minus 17, Gavin Newsom minus 18, AOC comparatively popular at minus 11. It's compared with minus 11 for J.D. Vance and minus 7 for Marco Rubio. Kamala Harris, by the way, is reportedly undecided on whether she's running for president again, but she's definitely keeping her options open. A long profile of her in Politico notes that Harris is taking some steps toward a run, but still won't commit either way. Meanwhile, the desire for Kamala is practically non-existent with the Democratic base. No one is demanding that she be foisted on them again, and her most recent foray into politics was a last-minute endorsement of Jasmine Crockett in the Texas Senate primary. Crockett was decisively beaten by James Tallarico, who is now the Dem nominee. Not a winning tactic for poor Kamala Harris. But even so, Harris got a favorable shout-out from a potential 2028 rival, Gavin Newsom, who wrote on X, "This wouldn't have happened under her watch," her referring to Kamala Harris, and presumably he's talking about the Iran war. And look, it's true that Harris indicated she would have opposed this sort of action, even though the Trump campaign, particularly J.D. Vance, implied it would be Harris, not Trump, who would take the nation to war with Iran. So much for that. Polls like this one from NBC show that no matter how many questionable policies the Trump administration pursues, no matter how many openings they create for Dems by, let's say, hugely increasing the price of gas, the Democratic Party remains toxically unpopular. Americans don't love everything Trump does. They really don't. But they're really, really not sure they can trust the Dems to govern ever again. And that's what I
view, like,
from those polls.
Dancing around, doing cartwheels when this poll came out last night.
I would never do such a thing.
Listen, the Democrats have to focus on some coherent messaging. They have to figure out how to actually get back in touch with the American people, look at the losses from the last election, and also take advantage of the moment that we're in, which is a moment of, like you said, economic chaos, a moment of international wars now, even though we're not calling it, a moment of Trump's approval rating being way down, and a moment of the promises that were made on the campaign trail by the opposite party for Kamala and everyone else that might be on that ticket in 2028, saying, well, you weren't delivered on those promises. But the difference, I think, with the moment that we have right now is that Democrats can't just say, look, everything that Trump did, look how bad it is, and here's what we're running on, that we're not that. They actually have to have like a policy attached to it and an idea and figure out what are the tent poles for the party for 2028, and then figure out different ways to get there. Everyone doesn't have to be Mamdani. Everyone does not have to be a moderate, James Tallarico, as people are describing him. But people can figure out what is the messaging, and then we're going to tell you our different routes to get there. And I think that would help them a lot. I think 2028 is going to be extremely unforgiving. People are going to be...
Just like me.
You are extremely unforgiving. I think they're going to require a bit of a party overhaul. So when this conversation about not wanting to see the same faces in the race, I think that's a real one. I believe Kamala should have an opportunity, if she wants, to run a full election campaign and see if she primaries well and then gets past that and becomes the candidate. This is all what people were asking for a few years ago, which could have been set up properly if Biden had decided not to run instead of adamantly went against the wants and needs of the Democratic Party,
right,
and
ran his own party.
Right. So he, there's a lot of contention there with Kamala being attached to Biden's presidency and the overall feeling of what Biden did in those last few months of his presidency. But people want the Democrats, most importantly, to re-engage. They want to see some new faces. And if they do see an old face, it better have some extremely specific policies attached besides the policy that you're not Trump. That's not going to work. And that's not a good plan. And the fact that we're so far out from the last election, more than a year, presidential election, and there hasn't been a clear and coherent, even if we had guests on it, I've been a little bit alarmed at the fact that they couldn't give us like specific policies whenever they're Democrat about what's next. And I know we were asking these questions like 3 months
Resist
into.
Trump, that's what's next.
Right, I want to hear specifics about what's next because the floor is essentially theirs. We talk about the midterms all the time. We talk about Trump's polling. But how do you not only point to the fact that maybe some of the strategies are failing, but then point to what you would do specifically differently? That's going to be the key of this whole thing.
I think Republican polling for Trump, polling for what the administration is doing, will rebound once it's clear who is the face of the Democratic Party. Because it's going to be one of those people. Honestly, it's very likely it's going to be Gavin Newsom,
we're so far away.
or Kamala Harris.
We're so far away from 2028. You don't know.
People
didn't think it was going to be Barack Obama at the time. They thought it was going to be Hillary Clinton at that time. Remember, Obama kind of skipped the line. So we don't know if there are a lot of people that have had suggested ideas that they may get into it and then may just ramp it up when it's time. But playing your hand too early might also not be a great decision in this climate.
Playing your card hand.
Yes, exactly.
Why isn't it red?
I don't know. I don't make the clothes. If I was a clothing designer, perhaps I'd have a different.
Oh, it looks very nice.
Thank you so much, Robby. Do we match today?
Well, we're in red and black playing cards.
Okay, so I guess so.
Har har. Senator Lindsey Graham sparked outrage for comments that he made regarding the conflict in Iran. We'll be right back. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham is facing heat for a couple of comments that he made on Fox News Monday night.
Here's the first clip that's making its rounds.
To all the anti-Seminites, to all the isolationists, I don't believe. Forget it. I'm not with you. I'm with Israel. I will be with Israel to our dying day. They're the best ally we could hope for.
Conservative commentator Matt Walsh wrote on X, "This is an insane thing for a United States senator to say. Totally indefensible." Then there was this clip where the senator sent a message to Saudi Arabia.
Here's what I want to say to Saudi Arabia tonight. I'm willing to do a mutual defense agreement with your country to give you protection in perpetuity. Under the agreement I've been pushing, and I hope we can continue to talk about, if you're attacked by Iran, we would go to war for you.
This obviously prompted people to question by what authority Graham had to guarantee something like that, like MS Now columnist Eric Michael Garcia.
Now, Graham also went viral earlier in the day for what some might unsurprisingly say is urging Israel to use more restraint when attacking Iran.
after Israel struck 30 of Iran's fuel storage sites on Saturday. Graham posted on X, writing in part, "There will be a day soon that the Iranian people will be in charge of their own fate, not the murderous Ayatollah's regime. In that regard, please be cautious about what targets you select. Our goal is to liberate the Iranian people in a fashion that does not cripple their chance to start a new life and better life when this regime collapses. The oil economy of Iran will be essential to that endeavor."
Now, Graham's seemingly sudden shift toward a more restrained strategy took a lot of people by surprise. The Young Turks' Cenk Uygur responded to Graham, writing in part, "You sound like you're pleading with your boss. Why don't we take charge? Tell them if they don't listen to what we tell them to do, we'll pull out of the war and stop funding them. Guarantee they listen after that." And his colleague, Anna Kasparian, joked that she had a better plan for Graham as the war rages on.
I have an idea. Why don't we just like airdrop Lindsey Graham in the middle of Iran right now? Or Lebanon. Why doesn't he fight Hezbollah himself? I'd love to see it.
Meanwhile, those strikes on Iran's fuel depots come as the war has led oil prices to skyrocket, blowing past $100 per barrel for the first time in nearly 4 years after Russia's attack on Ukraine. The price of a barrel of oil is hovering right around $90 as of this morning, down from a spike to nearly $120 per barrel early Monday morning. That jump in oil prices translated to an average 51-cent jump at the pump over the last week. The average price of a gallon of regular unleaded is now $3.53, up from just under $2 this time last month. The president appeared to be giving mixed signals as to when the war will end. During a House Republican conference in Miami, President Trump described the Iran war as a, quote, short-term excursion, but also said, "We have won in many ways, but not enough."
He added that the U.S. is searching ultimate victory, and that will put the danger to an end once and for all. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth also gave a presser earlier this morning. Here's what he had to say.
Today will be, yet again, our most intense day of strikes inside Iran. The most fighters, the most bombers, the most strikes. Intelligence more refined and better than ever.
The president described this war as very complete recently, and Hegseth is saying now today, a few minutes ago, it's the most intense day.
Let's come back to that. First, Lindsey Graham.
Okay.
Oh my God. Okay. He can't say, so first of all, it is a false notion that he is like some popular, beloved figure among MAGA. MAGA has never liked or trusted him very much. For this exact reason, he's just unilaterally, single-mindedly focused on war with everybody at the same time. First, he has no right to make an agreement or a promise to Saudi Arabia. He's not the president. Second, should we make such an agreement to defend them no matter what? What are these no matter what commitments? That's true of Israel too. I agree that Israel is our ally, but Britain is our ally, France is our ally, Germany is our ally, Canada is our ally, Australia is our ally. I would never say about any of them that no matter what they did, we would stand by them. I mean, if they committed war crimes and they were doing something not in our national security's interest, we would tell them not to do that, and then we would disassociate if they kept doing it anyway. So there's no ironclad arrangement with anyone. That's insane. That's not America first to say that no matter what, I'm with Israel. Okay, go. You know what? Then go be the senator from Israel. Come on, man. The only country for whom your loyalty should be unquestionable is the United States of America, and that is what offended so many people, myself included among them. That was just wrong.
And the American public the president hasn't made it extremely clear that we're not in a war that is not solely our own, right? They haven't convinced Americans, which is why you have people on both sides of the aisle asking for specific end games and goals in this entire back and forth, because a lot of people don't really see that transparently aside from help an ally, which is always an option, but war for a lot of people wasn't on the table, especially when you skip Congress. Now, I think that Graham is interesting because he's somebody who's looked at wholly as a war hawk. And so for him to say, scale back, you hit all these oil areas, he was
saying that because he's worried about the cost of oil going up too much and there being too much pushback from the American people, from Trump's own voters, to discontinue. That's why he was saying that.
But there are reports that even America was surprised by the level of attacks coming from Israel regarding hitting those areas full of oil. And so there were reports about it raining toxic oil through the skies of Iran and whether that was the goal. And so if the U.S., as we keep hearing from Hegseth, is leading this mission, then why are you surprised by what a smaller ally is doing. So much so that the war hawk is on television saying, wait, slow down. Also, Meghan McCain said perhaps maybe Lindsey Graham is not the person that should be on every single channel. Maybe the president should ask him to scale back, because not only is he sending mixed messaging by saying, wait, you're going too far, but also I support anything you do, he also is scaring people because he's going on air. And this is Meghan McCain's point, that he is going on air and just like, we need to push forward. And who are you communicating with to say that we're going to make new alliances, like you said, with Middle Eastern countries?
He was on Maria Bartiromo's show over the weekend, and he put on a free Cuba hat saying Cuba's next. He was giddy.
Right.
He had like a very disturbing glee at the prospect of yet more war. Again, Trump did promise no new wars. Right. We're going pretty hardcore against this right now. In service of one man's ideological crusade is what this sounds like.
And there's a merit to the concept that we're discussing and nuance that's needed about people, Iranian people or Cuban people or Venezuelan people, that do want freedom from the oppression of authoritarian regimes or governments that they don't align with, that will leave people dead. But there is a conversation about the way that we're going about it and the decision for war right now that we know has left several service members of Americans killed and several school children and young people killed as casualties of this war. And so a lot of people say, was now the appropriate time? Was there an imminent threat? And is this all justified to get to the goal of freeing the people? Because there's no plan. Even when Hegseth was asked, what's next? If Trump says we're near complete, what comes next? Are you guys going to help with that regime change? This was a question asked today. And he said the goal is to make sure that Iran has no access to any nuclear capabilities, meaning that's the only thing that he's focused on. That's a totally different goal than trying to free the people.
Lindsey Graham talks about the people. There will come a day where the people have risen up and taken control of Iran and that it's democratic. Maybe, but do we think that's a very likely option? I mean, does anyone believe that is a really likely option right now? I don't.
Khamenei's son was just put into the position to lead the country.
I mean,
we call that a couple. No, I mean he was though. So
right.
And what happens is, like I told you last week, there's a council of people that are largely aligned with the past regime that are going to instill the next person.
Still trying to kill all of
them. So we're just going to keep on then. It's not nearly done. And so again, just in this conversation, we've had several different goals and several different off ramps that make no sense, because Hegseth said this is the most intense day, and so we're just all over the place. Like we said, 11 days in and have no clear answers.
Yeah.
Up next, 2 teenagers have been charged in federal court following a failed, allegedly ISIS-inspired bombing attempt. Don't go anywhere.
2 Pennsylvania teenagers were charged in federal courts on Monday for allegedly attempting to provide material support to ISIS.
This alleged ISIS-inspired bombing attempt took place during a protest led by far-right activist Jake Lang outside of the residence of New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani.
The suspects, as I discussed in my radar yesterday, are 18-year-old Amir Balat of Langhorne and 19-year-old Ibrahim Kayumi of Newtown. According to the federal complaint, Kayumi blurted out as he was being arrested on Saturday that ISIS was the reason for his conduct. And Balat, after police said he asked for a piece of paper, allegedly wrote, quote, "All praise is due to Allah, Lord of all worlds. I pledge my allegiance to the Islamic State." The complaint further alleges that Balat and Kayumi wanted to carry out an attack bigger than the Boston Marathon bombing.
Now, authorities identified the devices as viable improvised explosive devices containing TATP, a highly volatile explosive, along with screws and bolts intended for fragmentation. They were homemade devices which did not explode.
James Barnacle, who runs the FBI's New York office, said in a news conference Balat and Kayumi sought to incite fear and mass suffering through this alleged attempted terror attack in the backyard of an elected city's official.
School officials confirmed that Balat is currently a 12th grade student in the Nishimini School District, and Kayumi graduated in 2024 from Council Rock High School North.
U.S. Attorney General Bam Bondi took to X, writing, "We will not allow ISIS's poisonous anti-American ideology to threaten this nation." Meanwhile, Tennessee GOP Representative Andy Ogles sparked lots of reaction with his statement, writing on X, quote, "Muslims don't belong in American society. Pluralism is a lie."
Founder and CEO of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, responded to Ogles' comment, writing, You don't belong in Congress. You hate America. In this country, we believe in equality and justice. Bigotry and hatred are for people like you and your donors. We know you're trying to drive up hatred toward Muslims so we can have more war for Israel.
Well, let's circle back to that in a minute. This is the attack on the protests. So this was anti-Muslim protesters who were outside Gracie Mansion, where Zoran Mamdani lives. And then I was very critical yesterday of the coverage of this because a lot of the initial news coverage made it sound like the would-be bombers were part of the anti-Muslim protesters. They were counter-protesters, and indeed
trying to harm.
They're in league with terrorists, not in an official capacity, but they're doing this on behalf of ISIS. ISIS does have the power to inspire attacks in the homeland. One of the other only terrorist groups that has managed to accomplish this is people actually try to hurt Americans inside America because of sympathy with ISIS. They'll have their day in court, but they're guilty. They should be, locked away for all time. And this is very, very disturbing stuff. You don't have to like the anti-Muslim protesters or agree with them, but they have the First Amendment right to express anti-Islamic ideas and organize around that, or any other nonviolent, peacefully ideas. The violent, non-peaceful people here were the Islamic extremist terrorist people. So that was not at all reported accurately by the media yesterday. Zoran Mamdani, when he put out a statement about it, didn't mention them initially by name. He's corrected that. Really gave one a false impression, but I'm so angry about it.
So I think that we have to condemn these type of attacks no matter what. Obviously, they came there to do harm. The first thing that I thought is when I heard about what they were trying to accomplish and luckily have failed to accomplish, right. I was really happy that they hadn't accomplished that, because you think back to
the Boston Marathon.
Right. If anything like that would happen.
Horrifying things that happened in
exactly.
our lifetime. And
everyone is already tense and filled probably with more fear than normal because we are at war once again. And so people naturally have these things. But to circle back before we have to run to Ogles' statements, I mean, Islamophobia doesn't have a place in our society. Our society was built on migration from different people that study different cultures. 20% of slaves that were brought here against their will were Muslim. And so I think that we need to remember that we don't say these things and promote these type of ideals from people that are sitting in Congress, because it's disgusting and bigoted. And so we want to make sure that our leaders are held to the fire by both parties when they say things like this, in the same way that we would hold anybody who tries to commit a crime against an American citizen to the fire across party lines. Ethics experts are sounding the alarm over alleged conflicts of interest in the Trump administration. I'm going to talk about that, a lot about that, in my lens.
All right, Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Let's talk about it. One of the core principles of American government is that people making the rules shouldn't be the same people quietly benefiting from them. But new reporting from ProPublica suggests that line is getting harder to see. The nonprofit newsroom has released thousands of financial disclosure records from more than 1,500 officials appointed during the Trump administration. The documents reveal a web of financial ties between senior government officials and the industries they help regulate. And while financial disclosures themselves are not unusual in Washington, ethics experts say the scale and the loosening of oversight raises serious questions about conflicts of interest. Now, lawmakers and top officials often have access to non-public information that can move financial markets, and they also have the power to shape policy in industries where they may still hold some financial stakes. That creates the potential for public service to overlap with private profit. One example involves billionaire investor Steve Feinberg, who is the Deputy Secretary of Defense. Now, before entering government, Feinberg ran the private equity firm Cerberus Capital Management. According to the disclosures, several companies owned by Cerberus have already received contracts tied to a massive Pentagon missile defense initiative known as the Golden Dome for America. You might have heard of it, a program modeled on Israel's Iron Dome, and it's expected to cost up to $151 billion. Now, Feinberg says he divested his stake in Cerberus and is not involved in its operations. The Defense Department also says he does not directly oversee the contracts tied to the projects, but ethics documents show he is still allowed to maintain an ongoing financial relationship with the firm for tax, accounting, and health services, a connection that could continue indefinitely. The disclosures also revealed well-timed financial trades for some senior Trump administration officials. According to ProPublica, certain officials, including Attorney General Pam Bondi, sold security shortly before markets dropped after tariff announcements. Those officials said they had no insider information at the time. Another case involves Todd Blanche, now the second highest ranking official at the Justice Department and formerly Trump's criminal defense attorney. Disclosure records show he held at least $159,000 in cryptocurrency assets, while at the same time overseeing decisions that halted investigations into crypto companies. Critics have called it a, quote, glaring conflict of interest, while the Justice Department says his actions were cleared through proper ethics channels. Conflicts of interest have long existed in both Republican and Democratic administrations, but experts say the broader shift is the dismantling of some of the guardrails that were actually meant to prevent them. On his first day back in office, you'll remember Trump rescinded an ethics pledge put in place under Joe Biden that limited how appointees could work on issues tied to their former clients. He also removed inspectors general across multiple agencies and the head of the Office of Government Ethics, leaving the whole office without permanent leadership. Trump himself has been openly dismissive of concerns about financial overlap between government and his own private businesses. Ethics experts say the bigger concern isn't always a proven violation, it's the erosion of public trust. The White House told ProPublica the administration is transparent and that its appointees bring valuable private sector experience. But the broader question remains, when the same people writing policy also maintain financial ties to industries affected by that said policy, the public is left wondering whose interests are really being served. And in a democracy, that doubt alone can be as damaging as the proven conflict. And I know you don't care about money, but this is, come on. This is why are you yawning? You don't care that all these people are directly making policy that's tied to what they're doing? I mean, Mark Berkowitz, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy.
Know nothing about the thing making policy?
Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy, former executive at Lockheed Martin. Lockheed currently, he still is invested and has stocks in it and 2 pensions from there. And Lockheed Martin is currently one of the top contenders to build this Golden Dome project that's going to net $151 billion. And he's overseeing and making policy for the same way he's benefiting. That doesn't ring alarms to you. That doesn't say anything to you. You don't care if anybody's just paying their companies that they get money from, as long as it gets done. However, just like it could all be with the intention, like, do we even need the dome? For the same person that wants to cut government spending to know that we're spending tons so people can get rich, I would think that you would have a different perspective.
Private people are spending their money.
The Golden Dome will be paid with taxpayer dollars, not privately. So therefore, we'll be spending our money on a Golden Dome that we haven't been sold to if we need it, and Lockheed Martin will benefit, and so will people working in the government.
This stuff gets really hard to sort out, because when government just does things itself, it costs a lot more money, because the government's very inefficient and doesn't have the profit motive and can just make more money. So they don't, like, this is why government projects take forever, and like California is still trying to build a high-speed rail that they've already spent $1 gazillion doing. It's been 30 years and they've not built it. So what's better, what we prefer, is when they contract with private companies to provide the service to build the thing. And ideally, you're right, ideally they pick based on who has the best plan and who's going to do it most cheaply, and then they pick the same one. And sometimes it's corrupt and there's some nepotism and they just pick the one that's most politically connected. And is that good? No. But sometimes the most connected person is the person who's the best, knows how to do it. That does happen. It can't be
all these coincidences, Robby. When we think about, I know there were reports.
No, it's not a coincidence. It's
that your company just happens to be the best. The one that you're going to make millions from just happens to be the best. Also, there's conversation around Republicans actually being mad about people like Christine Ohm, who have spent $200 million to put her face all over ads and then paid companies of allies that she's worked with that happen to do production way more and blow out budgets. As someone who does production and understands that Game of Thrones cost $15 million an episode. She spent $200 million on her riding around in a horse.
That's not really, that's just
and then paid it to people that she's...
That's not even corruption necessarily. It's just misuse of public funds. That money should not have been spent on her $200 million commercial.
And certainly not spent with a company that she has allyship with and just wants to pay a friend. And so, there's a lot of conversation.
Done anyway. I don't.
Fine, but a lot
matters that it was her friend or not her friend. It just shouldn't have been done.
Okay, but for someone who cares about the way we cut government spending, who supported Doge's initiative,
I would zero the budget for commercials for Christina.
Fine. Would you zero the budget for a Golden Dome that we don't know is going to be effective, that we're spending $151 billion on, that no one called for right now?
Probably.
Okay, well, the president's spending on that and investing in that and about to pay companies for that. And so this is what I'm saying. Would you zero the budget for the $800 million we're spending average daily on this war? We're 11 days in, but you want to cut the budget. Like, we're just spending money all over the place for somebody who's a fiscal hawk.
About willing to cut the defense budget. I said I could reduce it by 50% tomorrow.
Right, so you don't think that anybody who's in allyship with President Trump is making money from this war in any way? I mean, yes, they are.
I didn't. Well,
and so
that's you're doing a straw man. I didn't say that. Yes, I'm sure it is profitable for some people, and yes, that's regrettable. Preventing profits is not like my main goal. I certainly, with foreign policy, it is a little bit different because the incentive to pay off certain government contractors can itself become a reason to do warfare. I think it's a little naive to suspect that that's the main driver of war in general, is that they're trying to... Some people on the left, I think, overemphasize how much that plays a role. They're like, oh, well, Lockheed Martin or Raytheon is making the policy. Donald Trump just wants to do this. Lindsey Graham sold him that this is a good idea for ideological reasons. I think it's not a good idea, and if it was a good idea, I wouldn't care that Raytheon was making money, and if it was a bad idea, you know what I mean? I'm against it because I'm against it, and they didn't pick it for that reason. But yes, you're right. On the margins, I'm sure these incentives matter a little bit. I just think the left overemphasizes how much this is the big one.
Well, ProPublica looks into any, what they perceived ethics violations to find if there's any merit there, and they spent months, if not more than a year, looking into people that Trump has recently hired. And so there's a lot of smoke and fire. And so we have to call people to task when they're doing things to benefit themselves and not the American people, especially the America First administration.
I hope you remember this conversation we have about how money motivates everything and corrupts people, and incentive for money causes dishonest and deceptive behavior, when we have another discussion of people who have made accusations regarding the Epstein files, and when we talk about Havannah Syndrome a little bit later today. So keep that in mind, because we're going to revisit it. Up next, a new report from 60 Minutes alleges a CIA cover-up of a mysterious illness known as Havannah Syndrome, but I think something else is going on. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us. A new segment from CBS News' 60 Minutes reveals some shocking claims about the mysterious anomalous health incidents, more commonly known as Havannah Syndrome.
Now, according to 60 Minutes and investigative journalist Michael Weiss, U.S. intelligence has acquired a Russian weapon which is able to produce symptoms that are very similar to what's been reported by those who say they have Havannah Syndrome. And a former CIA officer says that the CIA has attempted to cover up the existence of this weapon. Let's take a look.
This is a massive CIA cover-up, and I say this with great regret. It's an organization that I loved. I believe in the mission. I was really good at this job. To this day, I want to see the CIA operate in a strong and effective manner.
The first reports of Havannah Syndrome started popping up about 10 years ago. Government officials often report symptoms, including bouts of severe headaches, vertigo, and cognitive problems. A 2023 assessment by U.S. intelligence concluded that it was, quote, very unlikely that the victims were attacked by a foreign adversary. And for now, that's still the official stance.
According to 60 Minutes, Homeland Security agents purchased a device from a Russian criminal network in 2024 that can emit microwave frequencies. Reporters were not permitted to see the device themselves, but it was described to them by their sources. They say the device doesn't look anything like a gun, it is silent, and doesn't create heat the way a microwave oven would. The device, according to sources, is programmable for different scenarios and can be operated by remote control. The range of the beam is several hundred feet, and it can penetrate windows and drywall. Sources told 60 Minutes the classified weapon obtained by the government has been tested in a U.S. military lab for more than a year. Tests on rats and sheep showed injuries consistent with those seen in humans with Havannah Syndrome.
60 Minutes also interviewed a doctor who was asked by the government to lead 2 investigations into Havannah Syndrome. And he concluded that Russian scientists had been conducting research on making a weapon like this for decades.
And what the Russians spoke about was the importance of the energy being pulsed in order to have biological effects on humans. When you produce pulses like this, you can actually stimulate electrically active tissue like brain tissue, and the heart for that matter, mimicking what the brain normally does, but now you're driving it with your pulses from the outside.
Okay, sure. Several lawmakers responded to the segment, including Senator Jeannie Shaheen, who wrote on X, "I have long believed that a foreign adversary could be the cause of anomalous health incidents, and I thank 60 Minutes for its reporting. All Americans should pay attention. As I wrote to the Department of War last month, Congress must be briefed now on any proposed changes that might impact our response and our care." Journalist Jordan Weissman wrote, "This is either going to be a big I told you so moment for people I've dismissed as tinfoil hat wearers, or one of the most embarrassing stories 60 Minutes has ever run." Okay, I got a lot of thoughts to get out of here in a short amount of time. We've covered Havannah Syndrome for a long time on the show. It's one of the earliest things actually I remember talking about when I started hosting Rising. I've long been skeptical, to be cards on the table, about this, because the health problems described by the so-called victims are not very specific. Disorientation, vertigo, cognitive problems. A, those can be symptoms of any number of things. B, some of them being represented by trial attorneys, people seeking settlements from the government. And as I alluded to previously, I have a lot of skepticism of people saying, I have this novel, strange disease, it's the government's fault, where's my paycheck? This kind of medical misrepresentation is one of the most common, absolutely common frauds in our society. I stepped in the crack on the sidewalk, I broke my back, I can't work anymore, I'm on permanent disability, this kind of thing. It is so common. Now, that said, obviously, if the government has actually apprehended a weapon capable of doing this, then that gives credence to what they were saying. It could be the case that it's a weapon and the initial intelligence changes. Initially, we thought there's no way COVID could have come from a lab, or at least that's what the people with the speakerphone were saying. It turns out a lot of people were thinking all along it could have come from a lab, and now most intelligence agencies have concluded that it did. So I'm a little confused, though, by a couple things. First of all, I don't understand the science whatsoever. And then when they start saying, like, it's like directing your brain waves, that sounds very made up to me. B, we got it from a Russian criminal syndicate? So the Russian government made it, but then a criminal group got their hands on it? Or did they get their hands on a duplicate? Or is it the weapon? Like, how did they steal it from the Russian government? That doesn't seem likely to me.
Well, now there's conversation about it ending up in the wrong hands. Like, if the criminal network had access to it, now they're wondering how many other people can have access to this, because, it will look bad on
Did they make a copy weapon, or did they steal the weapon from the government?
Either way, it'll look bad for the U.S. to have wanted that information, because obviously you want to know what Russia's working on to keep your enemy closer and you understand what's happening. But we contracted it from a criminal network, and now it negatively has affected the CIA.
This is a huge issue. I can't imagine the Russian government losing or having stolen a secret energy weapon. It's not like the collapse of the Soviet Union. I mean, Russia is a professionally run military.
They said that Russia has been working on versions of this for years. So perhaps they have a version of this, or perhaps they created or did like a mimic of it. Either way.
Okay, so they copied it?
But either way, the point is, a lot of people were tried to make feel crazy by the powers that be. And, you hear people that are speaking up that are, I know, but there were people that reportedly, according to this report, were in the Biden administration that were like, wait, there are some things that are lining up right here. The first time that people who worked on behalf of this country and for the government, for the CIA, were made to feel like they should actually be listened to. I don't see what their incentive would be. I understand you're saying they have lawyers. That's what people do to usually protect themselves. Not everybody is trying to be an ambulance chaser here. And I think the stories to me have been the most eye-opening thing. So I think 60 Minutes was saying that they actually have talked to people that have seen some of the ways of this, and they haven't seen the videos, but there's video proof that sources, according to their story, have seen, that have watched how these devices have affected real people that were
the device hasn't been used on the device is being used on rats and sheep.
No, they said in the vicinity they've seen people collapse, They tried to attack FBI agents on vacation sitting at a table with their family in Istanbul.
All theorized.
No, they said that the sources that they talked to saw these videos and they told CBS. And so they're telling you what they were told. Another video in a stairwell in the U.S. Embassy showing people on the stairs suddenly collapsing.
Right.
So this is what CBS is reporting,
but
that someone has saw the
There's
video.
no evidence that's tied to the weapon. It's theorized that that's the weapon. And maybe it is. But there's no direct evidence.
But you can't just say people collapsing is just normal behavior. I mean, yes, people collapse all the time, but specifically targeting people that work for the FBI.
Someone told me that they saw someone collapse for some reason at some point in Havana. That's not evidence of anything.
Why are you more hesitant to believe that the CIA wouldn't be protecting itself from looking silly by buying a weapon in the first place from a Russian criminal network rather than people who worked for the CIA trying to understand why they have conditions? I mean, you remember Agent Orange after Vietnam, right? That was largely dismissed, and then there's people that are still dealing with the remnants right now.
Right. I mean, we have to acknowledge why people would.
Yes, but I'm saying, I told you, I gave you an example of when the government downplayed the extent of something.
Right, and some
Agent Orange. And so we would have a 50-50 chance of who to believe. People who are ambulance chasers or the government actually implicating people and people's health and not admitting to it until years later. We have examples of both in extreme ways. And so I think that just falling on the side of
a directed psionic beam energy weapon.
You're trying to make it seem like a movie. You're trying to make it seem like a movie.
Well, it is. This is a very out there explanation. You're right, that doesn't mean it's impossible. And obviously, if they have the weapon, they have the weapon. I would like to see a scientific report from on the record from someone who's looked at the weapon, explains how it can do that, and then
they're saying the CIA is intentionally trying to hide this information. The government's trying to hide this information, and I think there are several reasons why. But that's what they're claiming. So I guess we have to do a lot of digging to get to the bottom of what's true here.
A Russian criminal network had the weapon doesn't quite add up to me. I don't understand how that would be.
So the origin is the biggest point of contention for you, not whether these people contracted a disease from a weapon that came from Russia. Just how it ended up in the wrong hands.
I can't believe it till I see it. I'll believe it when I see it. You're right. I believe the government lies to us, but 60 Minutes gets stuff wrong constantly. So it's not the most credible.
Your girl Barry Weiss is there. So
they've been on this for forever. They've been doing this. They've been some very interesting coverage on this that I've not really liked that much. But I remain open-minded, and to be clear, I have moved more in the direction of this is actually an energy weapon the way they said it. I was very dismissive of this. Now I'm in the middle.
We'll stay on top of it. The DOJ has reached a settlement agreement with LiveNation and Ticketmaster in their antitrust lawsuit. We're going to be right back after this. LiveNation Entertainment, the parent company of Ticketmaster, has reached a settlement in its antitrust fight with the Department of Justice.
The DOJ, along with dozens of states, sued LiveNation in 2024, accusing it of driving up ticket prices for consumers and also blocking competition. The lawsuit led to a trial that started just 1 week ago. According to reporting from The Hill, the agreement would involve LiveNation paying $280 million in civil penalties to the states involved in the case. Senior Justice Department official told reporters Monday that the settlement will bring prices down and give consumers more options by opening up the market for competitors.
However, many of the states involved are not on board with this settlement and have indicated they will keep the case going.
New York Attorney General Letitia James saying in a statement, settlement does not address the monopoly at the center of the case. She added, my Attorney General colleagues and I have a strong case against LiveNation and will continue our lawsuits to protect consumers and restore fair competition to the live entertainment industry.
Many on social media were also critical of this agreement. The progressive nonprofit More Perfect Union writing on X, quote, instead of taking LiveNation, Ticketmaster to trial, Trump just let them off the hook. The federal government had been building a case for years and could have broken up the LiveNation Ticketmaster monopoly, but Trump just let them settle out of court. And journalist Ryan Grimm writes, quote, there is apparently no amount of corruption too obvious to scare Trump away from it.
Love Ryan Grimm. I do not love More Perfect Union. I think it's one of the most economically illiterate Twitter accounts there is. I didn't know much about this, but I did look into it a little bit, and I think they're just totally wrong. The ticket prices have nothing to do with the monopoly or even Ticketmaster itself. They're set by the artists.
No, the artist Taylor Swift was complaining. Other artists were complaining they were driving up the prices. LiveNation and Ticketmaster run ticket sales, concert promotion, artist management, and venues for a lot of cases. And they're actually, when we were watching this go to trial, we saw a former Barclays executive. He testified that Michael Rapino, who was the president of LiveNation, told him the concerts might disappear if the venue switched to another ticketing company. So there's been threats on the record that people are saying under oath.
Okay, but that...
He's saying that there's a threat that you can't move.
The tickets...
Yes, this is what we would have saw on trial. We would have watched this play out. People are saying that the same company that does the promotion sells the tickets. Like, everybody makes money when the prices go up.
Let me break this down for you very quickly. The ticket sales are set at a price that is below what customers are willing to pay for it. The Eras Tour was $130 for a ticket. So scalpers buy up all the tickets and then resell them for thousands of dollars more. People on like Facebook Marketplace are trying to get tickets to this concert for $2,000 and $3,000. That's what people are willing to pay for it. The ticket people, the legitimate ticket people and the artists, they charge a lower price than what people are willing to pay. And so that creates this opportunity for scalpers to do this. It has nothing to do with the monopoly. It has nothing to do with Ticketmaster. It has nothing to do with the artists. It's that there are just more people willing to see this, and they're willing to pay a higher price, and that's the end of the mystery right there. It has nothing to do with the monopoly.
It's not the end of the mystery, Robby, because there's 39 different states and DC that all want to push back against this. So if you think about people that are speaking loud enough so that their state representatives and leadership wants to keep moving forward.
People speaking. I'm explaining.
People are mad online. You can say they're wrong
because they don't understand.
They want to break up the monopoly. They want to break up the monopoly so they have a variety of options when they're purchasing tickets. That's what they're asking for. And so 39 states are still going forward. Why are you with the minority of other states that are not going forward and the big corporate monopolies?
Is the minority or the majority? I'm just explaining how it works. Like, you could. If there was 2 or 3 different ticket companies, they'd end up charging about the same thing.
No, competition.
Because it's a price set by Taylor Swift.
You know that. You bring up the fact that competition brings price down. We know that. And so if there are other options, the price goes down.
What I'm saying is the price is it's artificially too low, because clearly you're willing to pay more because people do and will. It's because it's being set too low by the artists. And that's not going to be resolved by breaking it up.
They're not going to let them get off of the hook by just paying a settlement and paying $280 million back to all those states. What is everybody going to get, $5 back?
That'll make everybody feel good. Won't change anything. But we have to leave it there, even though I could rant about this a bit more. That does it for us on Rising Live. Thanks for watching, and look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel so you never miss any content. We'll see you back here tomorrow.